All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to your Everything College Football podcast. Today, me and Nick here, we're doing our preview and prediction for a mega showdown in Week 10 in the Big Ten, a conference championship appearance in Indianapolis, likely on the line here. Ohio State traveling to Penn State. Buckeyes are 4-point favorites. 47.5 is the total. 12 p.m. Eastern time for some reason on Fox. Beaver Stadium in University Park, Pennsylvania. Looking at the Ohio State offense, this is a group that was coming off of a bye week. It did not look all that great against Nebraska. Only 285 yards of total offense. Only ran 47 plays. We'll start with the passing game. Will Howard's been great this year. I would say 256 yards per game, 17 touchdowns, 4 picks, 3 straight games and completing 80% against some pretty tough defenses. I know he made that one mistake, Nick, after playing a great game against Oregon, slid a second too late, and they ended up losing. It is what it is. Move on. I thought he played a great game. He's been doing very well this season despite a bad interception against Nebraska, and I think that he's going to have another impressive outing here. Jeremiah Smith, the true freshman, him and Emeka Egbuka have been phenomenal producers at wide receiver. Colonel Tate's been a great number 3 for them as well. Tight end G. Scott gets involved a little bit, and then Brandon Ennis has 8 receptions this season. People say you can't win a national championship with Will Howard, Nick, and I disagree. I think this is a very good quarterback. He's a veteran. He's very good at the goal line as a runner. He also has nice mobility as well. Will he prove my point on Saturday?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I think Will Howard's been a strong quarterback so far, good enough getting the job done. 74% comp rate, nearly 1,800 yards passing, that is. 17 touchdowns, 4 picks, 181 attempts. He's been completing at a high clip, very accurate, 1,800 yards passing. The 4 picks, obviously, you could certainly look at that and say that maybe that's a bit disappointing so far this season, but I really don't think it's that bad considering the guy he replaced in Kyle McCord has a lot more interceptions than that and had a really bad game this past weekend. Ohio State fans ran him out of town, and I've been, judgment of that, but it looks like maybe I was a bit wrong. I got to eat my words a little bit and say that Will Howard has been solid and has worked out so far. Smith's been a fun target for him to have and certainly been a really key piece. 17.8 yards per grab and 8 scores is certainly a good number. Egbuka's been really solid as well with a 5.46 and 6 scores, while Tate is a really solid number 3 underrated player in my opinion with 2 touchdowns and 17.6 yards per grab. Ennis and Scott a little bit further down, while Quinshon Judkins has a few grabs as well, being part of this receiving offense. I think they're doing enough. 283 through the air, I think, is solid. Nearly 3 touchdowns per game through the air is solid as well. I think Ohio State fans might try and pick and say what's wrong here, but I really don't think you can say that. I think this has been a really strong season from Howard so far. I've been really happy with the way he's looked.
Now you look at the Ohio State run game all the way back in Week 1. I thought they disappointed a little bit. They've been pretty good since then. They were able to spark a big run against Oregon that was kind of cutting into that production. Overall, though, I thought they had adequate balance against the Ducks. They had nothing this past weekend, 64 yards on 31 carries. This is a team that wants to be a run-first offense. And, it seems like the left tackle, Josh Simmons, going down for the year has significantly costed them. Zen Mikowski, he's actually been a pretty respectable run blocker. But in pass protection, he's been abysmal. I think that's certainly something that's going to hold this offense back. The run game's got to get back to it, though. Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, they both almost have 500 yards each, combined 10 touchdowns on the ground. Less than 200 yards per game this season. We already knew the offensive line would be a bit of an issue for the Buckeyes. It's the weakest, positional group on the team. This team's got to be better, though. Going against Penn State, I don't imagine they're going to be able to run the ball too well. But these are still highly explosive backs that can hurt you in a variety of ways, especially in short yardage and at the goal line. So their responsibilities are still going to be massive, especially if it comes to helping pass protection on that left side. As again, Mikowski's been a big disappointment through 2 games.
Certainly the O-line's been an issue for this Ohio State team, and that has proven to show that they cannot really run the ball as effectively as they would like to, which is certainly a disappointing thing for Ohio State. This is a running back room that has a lot of talented pieces, and they're not been able to move the ball on the ground as effectively as they would hope to so far this season. Judkins and Henderson have been okay so far, right? Judkins 520 and 6 touchdowns. Travion Henderson 450 and 4 touchdowns. The offensive line has been a bit of an issue, and I think that's certainly something that you're going to have to highlight throughout the rest of the season, something that you've highlighted just there. They got to be strong on the ground here because this Penn State defensive line is a really good unit. They're really physical. They're really good stuffing them run. This could pose some issues for Ohio State where they could definitely struggle to run the ball in this game. I could easily see Penn State winning that matchup in the trenches.
Left guard Donovan Jackson, he's been great upon his return from injury. At center, Seth McLaughlin seems to put some of the woes he had last year behind him. He's having a terrific year. Right guard, Ted Gratash-Mola, having an all right season. I think he's probably the biggest liability outside of Mikowski now. So those 2 guys are ones you want to circle. And Josh Fryer is having an all right year at right tackle. It's obviously a defensive line with a lot of heat, across the board on the interior and in their pass rush. moving to the Penn State offense. And a lot of things to monitor here. Drew Aller likely going to be a game-time decision, injured his knee in the late second quarter against Wisconsin. And, this was a big dilemma for Penn State. They were losing this game. Bayou Perbola had to come in for the most part early on the offense. They did a good job of controlling field position. It ended up paying off where they had them backed up and they had a pick six to put them ahead. Then after that, the offense got in high gear and put this one away. Very impressive stuff there. We'll start with Aller. If he plays, he's probably going to be a little hobbled. He's a guy that has nice mobility, makes good throws on the run, and you're going to need that against this D-line. Bayou Perbola, though, a guy that I liked his usage so far this year. They had a couple of packages for him, being able to utilize his ability as a runner. If he's going to be the starter on Saturday, Nick, he's going to have to play like he did against Wisconsin, where 11 for 13, 98 yards, and a touchdown. He was throwing with some great confidence, did not feel afraid to thread the needle one bit. He's obviously going to be running the ball a lot, probably maybe north of 10 carries. I think Perbola, they'll be confident in, but in terms of big play ability, this offense likely won't have it. But against Wisconsin, he was able to convert and march him downfield. I was very impressed with his performance, but as a full-time starter against the Buckeyes, which would be his first career start, how do you think he would do?
Drew Aller has been better and, again, quietly underrated so far this season, not getting a whole lot of love in the grand scheme of college football. Not really being that super flashy player, but I think he's been really consistent, really strong. I've been happy with how he's played. 71% comp rate, 1650 passing, 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. I think it's solid overall. I think he's been really good. And, obviously the injury is a big factor. If he doesn't play, I think that does change the look here. He's been okay on the ground as well for this team, 129 yards rushing and 3 scores. Does have that little bit of a red zone threat. If you put in Perbola, I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I think you're certainly going to want to run the ball a lot more if you're Penn State in this situation. I think you're going to want to make sure you don't put your young quarterback, inexperienced quarterback in harm's way. I think that's really certainly the key. He was good against Wisconsin, though, stepped into a tough situation, got the job done on a tough road environment. It's tough to be there. I was at a game at that stadium this year. It's loud in there. Those fans certainly come out, and they do bring the noise. So I don't think it's as big as an issue as some people may try to make it out to be. I think he's a serviceable quarterback, has a full week of practice to get the reps, get comfortable. Playing at home, playing in that environment is certainly going to be beneficial. Not playing on the road, I think, does play a key factor in that. I think the offense won't be that much of a drop down. They'll probably run the ball a little bit more than they were planning on it, probably more reliance on the run than you would expect out of a Penn State offense, but I don't think it would totally kill them because this is a nice rushing attack that can still really keep up and get things done. It gets to the point, though, if he starts having turnovers, starts getting uncomfortable, that's when things could really go awry for the Nittany Lions.
And of course, this rushing attack, putting about 200 yards per game, a little skewed. They haven't been as dominant conference play, even though against Wisconsin really took over in that second half. 2 great running backs in Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. And, Andy Kolanecki. He's going to have to find ways to get these guys involved because the last 3 years, neither team's really been able to run the ball in this matchup. I don't expect that's going to change here. These are good, talented running backs, but they certainly lack speed. But they do have the nice physicality, and they play hard, and they have pass-catching abilities. They can block, stuff like that. So the running backs will certainly be big in this game. Last year, they did a terrible job of getting them involved. And I thought they ran the ball quite well early on. They just shied away from it too early and never seemed to go back to it. And, big reason why they struggle is the offensive line is just not all that polished. I certainly think on the interior is the strongest part of this O-line. Ola Ione at left guard's having a great year. Center Nick Dawkins is doing all right. At right guard, Sal Wormley as well has been pretty sound in pass protection. But the tackles, I think, are vulnerable. Drew Shelton at his left tackle spot, not all that great. Anthony Doka, he's a great run blocker, but in terms of pass protection, I think he could be, someone that they look to attack. What do you make of this offensive line, Nick? That is certainly, again, one of the weaker groups on their team as well.
This is a weaker unit. It certainly is a unit that I have some question marks for. I worry about some of the play on the left side. I worry about some of the play in the center, certainly with some of the potential on the right guard or the center. I think they got to run the ball here effectively. If Penn State wants to win this game, they got to run the ball a ton and have a really nice success. Ketron Allen and Singleton are 2 great backs, right? 500 yards for Allen, 480 for Singleton, 4 touchdowns for Allen, 3 for Singleton. They're really talented backs. They got to run the ball very effectively here if they want to win this game. They're going to have to rely on the running the ball pretty much a lot of the game. Like I said, got to be, change up the playbook a little bit because you do have a quarterback that's inexperienced. They got to find a way to block. They got to be really good in run block. They got to clear the lane here. They have to make sure they try and stunt this pass rush for Ohio State to give their backs an opportunity to get some ground game, run downhill, pick up some speed because you really don't want to put too much pressure on your young quarterback in this situation.
Now, one thing they did against Wisconsin I really liked is they would throw an extra lineman out at receiver or slot receiver, and they would motion him in, and they would snap the ball while he was coming down, giving them an extra big body in the box. I thought that was a pretty interesting way to kind of get crackdown blocks, so we'll see if they try to utilize that in this game. Look what they have at pass catcher. Oregon certainly gave Ohio State some fits, but that's a lot of talent, a lot of speed that Penn State just doesn't have. Harrison Wallace has been a big play receiver at times for him this year. Tyler Warren's obviously, I think, right now the best tight end in the country, an ultimate chess piece for them. He's certainly going to look to get a lot of targets. Liam Clifford, he's showcased some nice hands, but he's not a burner by any means. Amari Evans only has 11 receptions, so how reliable can he be? And the Buckeye transfer, Julian Fleming's been pretty absent this year. They just don't have the weapons right now, Nick, to compete. But if the defense can play hard and they can, run the ball with a little bit of authority, Tyler Warren will make an impact.
This is something that does worry me, right? This Penn State receiver room does concern me when you bring in a quarterback that's inexperienced. I said they didn't have to change the game plan a whole lot. They didn't have to rely super much on the running, but it does kind of concern me. This is a wide receiver room that is not super talented, and not a lot of guys that go out there and make big plays for their quarterback, make contested catches, and make things a little bit easier. Warren's a great tight end, but they do rely on the tight end play a lot. He has double the catches the second highest receiver, nearly 560 yards receiving and 4 touchdowns. He's a big target in the red zone. Obviously, Ohio State's going to know that. Singleton has 4 receptions in the red zone as well. He's a big target. So those are your 2 key receivers in the red zone, and they're not receivers. They're a running back and a tight end. Wallace and Clifford have been okay, but not really blowing my mind. And Julian Fleming's got to be one of the more disappointing players in college football in terms of where his hype was coming out of high school to transition and play, because it's just not working out for him. He was not great at Ohio State and is really struggling at Penn State. Been super disappointing. Been an absolute ghost so far for this team. I am a bit worried, and this Penn State wide receiver room continues to worry me because they rely heavily on the tight end. They're relying on the running backs in the red zone. I wonder if Ohio State will be able to scheme and be able to counteract that pretty easily with some of the talent on this defense. Certainly could be a concerning thing for Penn State, something that does worry me going into this matchup.
Now you look at the Ohio State defense, a unit that's been phenomenal this year outside of the Oregon game where Denzel Burke was burnt toast. The run game, the run defense wasn't all that polished. The left side, running towards the left tackle for Oregon was very successful. Now they don't have Josh Connerly, that being Penn State. They have Drew Shelton, but that was certainly a bit of a vulnerable area for Ohio State in that game when defending the run. Look at their D-line, though. These guys are phenomenal. Jack Sawyer, JT Tumalau coming off the edge. Phenomenal players on the interior, and Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams was having a phenomenal year. This D-line, I would say, is probably the best in the country. They certainly haven't been overpowering, and the production isn't, eye-popping by any means. But this is still going to be a tough unit, especially for Penn State to crack, a team that does have 20 sacks, and it seems like everybody else, everyone gets involved a little bit here. So this is an Ohio State defense. They're incredibly tough. It's going to be hard to run the ball with a lot of authority on them. But Andy Kolanecki, when he was at Kansas, had quarterbacks. They had, running ability. So I think there's certainly going to be some wrinkles if Pribola is the starter. And even if he's not, you're still going to see it involved, or they could potentially maybe, have some wins on the boundary. And I think that's going to be the most vulnerable area for Ohio State, because I don't think you're going to beat them on the interior.
There's a very strong team on the interior, and that poses a threat for Penn State, who are going to want to try and run the ball, trying to stuff it down their throats. And I think it's going to be tough to do so with how strong this defensive line is. Ty Hamilton, 26 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Jack Sawyer, 22 total tackles, 2.5 sacks. JT Tuimoloau, 20 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Leads the team in both categories. Tyleik Williams, 20 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Caden McDonald, 10 tackles. Caden Curry, Keontae Jackson, 8 tackles each, plus a tackle for loss each. Very productive unit, very strong unit on the defensive line. This is a key unit, and they certainly look to be winning the battle in the trenches against a weaker Penn State offensive line.
They look at the middle of this defense. I think these linebackers have done a pretty good job this year. You weren't sure how they would click. Sonny Styles moving down to his more natural positions really benefited him. Cody Simon, he's having a phenomenal year, especially against the run. Arvell Reese, he was ejected for targeting in the fourth quarter. He was not going to be playing in the first half this weekend. Ohio State made an appeal to the Big Ten, and they overturned that conviction. I don't really understand that. I've never heard that before, but nonetheless, that's an extra body in there that's played a lot of snaps this year and can certainly be important at times. These linebackers, though, the 2 leading tacklers on this team, they've been very good. I certainly think they might lack some athletic ability and coverage. So if they draw matchups against Tyler Warren, that could be maybe a bit of an issue for them. But I think for the most part, these linebackers are going to be in for a sound afternoon.
Certainly a strong unit, in my opinion. Sonny Styles looked really good at linebacker. Fits in that position really well. 43 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, a sack. Cody Simon, 33 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a sack, 4 pass breakups, getting really good. Reese, 19 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss. The whole overturning, targeting, all that stuff, that's very interesting how that's going to, or ejection, that is. Wonder how that's going to continue to turn out. That's a very interesting sort of smaller side story for this game. CJ Hicks, 14 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, or 1.5 sacks for him, that is. Really solid player, Hicks, who's underrated, rotates in and out. A solid redshirt sophomore on this unit that caps out this unit that's led by Styles and Simon, who've been really strong and really good so far this year.
Now you look at the Ohio State secondary. And you talk about matchups with Tyler Warren, Lathan Ransom, he's going to be the guy to do that. He's guarded some very good tight ends in his career, Brock Bowers being one of them. And this should be no issue for him. He does a very good job in that regard. He's having a great year in all regards for them in his safety spot. And obviously plays a lot of nickel, so he's going to be the kind of rover guy for him. At corner, though, Davison Igbason's having a pretty sound year. Probably not as good as I would have imagined in coverage. Denzel Burke, outside of the Oregon game, he's been pretty good, but you want to avoid, getting burned like he did a couple weeks ago. And again, I don't think Penn State has much threats for that to be exposed. Jeremiah Matthews, when he gets on the field, pretty good as well. And of course, Caleb Downs, a guy that's going to be in the box a lot, I would imagine, third leading tackler for them. He's really good at firing downhill and making tackles against these running backs. So this is a guy you're going to look to make plays behind the line of scrimmage. And if you can have Penn State in second and third and long, which I envision they will for most of the game, it's going to be an opportunity for these corners to be up front in terms of press and be physical. And it's going to be hard for Penn State to move the ball. So if they can't run and be in 3rd and 5 and short, Nick, this secondary is just going to tee off.
The secondary is going to tee off. This is a really good unit. That's some really talented pieces across the board. Caleb Downs has been really good. He's a really solid player in the box, a great tackler, 31 total tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 3 pass breakups. Really pleased with what he can do. We saw him at Alabama last year be a really good tackler, continuing up that form. Ransom's been really good, 29 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss for him, plus a fumble. He returned for a touchdown, really good coverage asset. Burke, a reliable coverage asset most of the time, had a bad game in Oregon, but still a really talented player, 26 total tackles, 2 interceptions for him. Igbeson is really good, 20 total tackles, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. Jeremiah Matthews, 7 total tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, and a sack. You want to see a little bit more picks out of this Ohio State secondary. They only have 5 on the season. You're hoping to see a little bit more out of that. Could they take advantage of a younger quarterback making a mistake and get an interception? I certainly think it's possible. That does play in favor of Penn State. This team has not been as ball hawking as you hoped of the secondary. They're not getting as many interceptions. Hopefully they can find a way to do that if you're an Ohio State fan, because that would be a really nice way to boost yourself in this matchup playing in a hostile environment.
Now we move to the Penn State defense. You look at their run-stopping unit as well. It's a group that has been very good this season. USC had 189 yards on them. A bulk of that was like a 70-yard trick play run that they had. They got burned to the edge against the Lincoln Riley offense. Ohio State, they're certainly not going to provide nothing like that in terms of speed in their backfield. But they do have physicality. I think that's going to be the name of the game to Ohio State. They're going to look to pound it on the inside. And, they certainly like to have off-tackle runs they can rip. This is a great D-line, one of the best in the country. Zane Durant is leading the way on the interior. Diva, Jay Thomas, Eamon Vanover, Keziah Izzard. That's just to name a few. They're very deep here. I'd say they're about 8 deep on the D-line. Denny Sutton, and Abdul Carter. This is a phenomenal edge rushing group. They certainly haven't provided as much production as I was liked, off the edge, even though Carter does have 9.5 TFL, only 4 for Sutton, and only 2 sacks. Carter's a disruptor, though. He's going to be hard to guard. It was a big issue for USC guarding him, even though they kept him out of the back for the most part. Mikowski's going to need help on that left side, Nick. It's not going to be able to be just him defending Carter or Dennis Sutton. A lot of heat up front for Penn State. I expect them to have a pretty good day against this rushing attack for the Buckeyes, but it's really going to come down to physicality and I think a little bit of scheming from the Buckeyes' point of view.
You got to imagine this defensive line is going to have a strong day. There are a lot of really talented players here. Abdul Carter, 30 total tackles for him, 9.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, plus 3 pass breakups. He's a do-it-all kind of guy, all over the place. Really strong player. Zane Durant, 18 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, pass breakup. Danny Sutton, 16 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Izzard has 8 total tackles. Smith Vilbert has 7 total tackles plus 1.5 sacks. Really solid numbers across the board for this team. You would expect a little bit more out of this defensive line, certainly. I think that's a fair expectation, but this is still a really good unit. They disrupt the run well. They really do clog those gaps. And for an offensive line in Ohio State that's really not having a great season, this defense is holding their rushing attack opponents to under 100 yards per game. Really good unit overall, and I think they will have success here. I don't think Ohio State will have a lot of success running the ball against this defensive line that is a good unit that knows how to overpower offensive lines. I like that matchup advantage for the Nittany Lions.
Look in the middle of this defense. They have seemingly found their footing a good bit, but I certainly have worries. Tony Rojas, he's playing the most at linebacker. Not been a very good run defender. He has 13 missed tackles as well. That's far and away the most on the team. Nobody else has more than 6. Kobe King, on the other hand, has been very sound and efficient, especially against the run, and a more formidable tackler. They're deep at this position as well. Dominic DeLuca, Tyler Eldston, those guys haven't been getting on the field as much, but they have nice rotational pieces here at the linebacking spot. And, of course, safety Jalen Reed is probably the best player on this defense. He gets in the box a little bit as well. But it's really going to be up to King and Rojas, Nick, and certainly a big disparity between one starter and the other Rojas will have to be much better because Ohio State, they're not just going to get steamrolled up front like we imagine. There's going to be opportunities for them to break off some runs. He's got to be able to make tackles, which is hard to do against these two running backs.
Kobe King, he has to have a strong day here, right? He has a really good day, as does Rojas, but King has to be the tone setter. He's the better player of the two. Rojas is a younger player, true sophomore, still finding his footing. King has to be a great leader, has to have a clean game, in my opinion. 34 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, a sack. Rojas, 30 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, a pick, and 2 pass breakups. Those two, they got to be strong together. This has to be a really A-plus clean game for them. They have to be as good as they can possibly be, really polished in this matchup, because they got to be strong. If they get beat over the middle, it could be a very long day. Will Howard can certainly pick them apart. Dominic DeLuca's solid in rotation with 12 total tackles as well. These two got to be strong. This is a big matchup for this defense. Can they be good in the middle? Can they be good against the run? Can they be good against the pass as well? These two linebackers have to have a good day.
Now you look at the secondary, it's been pretty sound this year. 6 touchdowns allowed to 6 picks. The most comparable opponent would be USC. They had 220 yards passing. A pretty solid day for the Trojans, even though they got a little stale there in the second half. This is a team that's got great safeties. The aforementioned Jalen Reed, Zakee Wheatley. These guys are both phenomenal in the box. They're great against the run. Pretty solid in coverage as well. Cam Miller at the slot, he's a guy that's been targeted a good bit, and he's allowed an 80% completion rating. And then these corners, Nick, I talked about all off season. This is the one area I'm iffy in. I think A.J. Harris, the former 5-star transfer, will have a pretty good career here for Penn State. But other than that, what are we going to see? Jalen Kimber, I don't think he's anything too special of a player. And the number 3 corner, Elliott Washington, he's kind of having a bit of a shaky year as well. These corners, are they good? Is the scheme good from Tom Allen? Absolutely. And I think as time goes on, this group will certainly be just fine. But outside of A.J. Harris, I'm certainly concerned because these are elite wide receivers you're going up against. I don't think Jalen Kimber is going to slow anybody down. So they're going to need this pass rush to cook up, Nick, and if they're going to leave them on islands and man coverage, could be a tough afternoon.
This is definitely a disadvantage for Penn State. These wide receivers are very talented, and Will Howard is a very talented quarterback. They're going to hit those players on the outside. This, the exterior of this secondary does worry me. Kimber, 12 total tackles. Washington, 11 total tackles. Washington, 4 pass breakups plus a pick. Kimber, 2 pass breakups. Washington been better in coverage than Kimber, but both of them leave a little bit to be desired. Cam Miller, 14 total tackles plus a sack and a pass breakup. A.J. Harris, 20 total tackles, a pick, and 3 pass breakups for him, while Wheatley has 37 total tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, a pick, 2 pass breakups. And then Reed, who's been the best player on this defense, a really good player. Nice stat sheet stuffer, 44 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 picks, which one of them he took to the house, and 2 pass breakups. He's got to have a good day. These safeties have to help out these cornerbacks because they are definitely in a position to get exposed potentially. Harris and Kimber could be in trouble. Washington coming in as a substitute could be in trouble as well. That's definitely a matchup disadvantage for Penn State.
Now we're going to have the tail of the tape, the team comparisons. I think quarterback clear edge for the Buckeyes, running back. I'm going to pay respects to both of them. I think they're even. Wide receiver, clear edge for the Buckeyes as well. O-line, I think Penn State's probably got it. I think they have a stronger interior, even though the Buckeyes also have some good players on the interior. I'll go ahead and just give the nudge to Penn State because they're not facing an injury, a left tackle that's significantly hurting their offense. The defensive line, I'm going to call that one even. Linebacker in the secondary, I'll lean it towards the Buckeyes. Look at the final thoughts and the prediction. Ohio State, don't let the offensive line, liabilities plague this offense, which it seemingly has done, at least last week. Contain the boundary versus the run, make them try to beat you on the interior. And I think for Penn State, control the game, rough up the Buckeyes' run game, and don't get burned on 3rd and long by this passing attack to actually absolutely drain your momentum. And this is a game that Penn State has struggled to win. It's been almost a decade since they had that major upset, and they seem to be in every single one of these games. They just can't finish the deal. Last year, I didn't feel they would even score 10 points, and they pretty much didn't. And I think that's going to be kind of the same story again. If all their plays are not, if he does, his mobility is going to be a little bit limited against that pass rush. That's certainly a bit of an issue. I think Ohio State's passing attack's going to have a pretty sound day. How will they hold up in protection? I don't know, but I think Howard's going to have opportunities to operate, and these receivers will be open more often than not. It's going to be a tough game, Nick, a defensive affair. I just don't see Ohio State losing a second game this season. And I think for Penn State, if they can run the ball with a little bit of authority and control the clock, they'll have a great chance of winning this game. Defense will do its job, but at the end of the day, won't be enough. Penn State will just not be able to operate on offense, and the Buckeyes will avoid a very major trap game on the road.
Top 5 matchup going down in Happy Valley. I think when you look at the tail of the tape, from the previous segment, I think a lot of it makes sense, very balanced across the board. These are even teams, but Ohio State gets a lot of the nods. I think they just have the better athletes overall in this matchup. I'm going to take Ohio State to win this one as well. I think Penn State will struggle to score points in this rivalry. Like you said there, Penn State hasn't won a game since 2016. They only have one win since 2012. Been a long 12 years for this Penn State program. That one win, of course, the famous one with a blocked field goal that was returned for a 70-yard touchdown, upsetting the number 2 team in Happy Valley that got that stadium rocking. And a lot of Penn State fans will certainly hope that something could turn like that. I think if they are going to win this game, they're going to have to benefit from big plays on the special teams as well. I don't trust the offense. I don't trust James Franklin. I've never been particularly high on James Franklin. I think he's a great coach. I think this has an opportunity for them to disappoint as per usual. We've seen this team come into this game as a highly ranked team and find a way to lose. They lost in 2017, where they're their number 2 team in the country. They were the number 9 and 8 team in years after that. They lost their number 7 team last year, and they didn't look very good in that game either. So I think this has another opportunity for Ohio State to get a big win. I think Ohio State, they know the script, right? They got to win out, basically, really, from the way it feels like. They could get in with a second loss, but I think they want to kind of control their own destiny, get to the Big Ten title game. They know the script, Ryan Day's team. They know they can't afford another loss, or people will be certainly coming after his job as well in Columbus. He's got a raging fan base to take care of down there. I like, the advantage for Ohio State. The Ohio State offense just has more weapons, more opportunity with Howard to not rely on the run, to be able to throw the ball, create more with that offense. If Penn State struggles to run the ball, I think that their offense will look a little one-dimensional and cause some issues. I like Ohio State to win this one. Certainly a tough environment, but playing at noon kind of nullifies that tough environment. Ohio State fans probably going to be patting the Fox executives on the back for slotting this game at noon and taking a little bit out of that Penn State environment that is so daunting at night. A good game, a very important game to watch, but in the end, I think it will be a boring game that Ohio State will win like they have over the past couple of years, as they will move on and try to continue to build their way towards Indianapolis and ultimately the college football playoff.
That's going to be it for today's episode. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.